Good morning. This is the middle school installment of the district's virtual question and answer sessions. I'm Tim Hulihan, Stillwater Middle School principal, and in this session, I will be talking about several components of the middle school's reopening plan, including the 6 variations of student schedules based on their grade and educational plan. This session is being recorded and will be available on our district's website shortly afterwards. I'd like to acknowledge Superintendent Morris and Elementary Principal Mrs. Tolman for the informative and comprehensive presentations they gave last week. You are still able to watch their presentations by visiting our website. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the teachers, secretaries, custodians, support staff, directors, and administrators for all of their efforts to make this plan a reality for our students. In particular, I would like to thank my secretary, Mrs. Erdang, and the master scheduler for the middle high school, Mrs. Kennedy. They helped me optimize the final middle school plan by identifying possible conflicts and problems. I'd also like to take a second to thank Mr. Froschauer, our district assistant principal. He is screening the questions that come in during this broadcast. And that's my final reminder, is that you can submit questions during this live broadcast using the link provided in the email invite, and I will answer them at the end of the presentation. Bear with me a second. I'm going to present my screen to you, which will be a slideshow. From the beginning, our guiding principles have been to provide a safe place to work and learn, also to transport, educate, and feed our children. I'd like to move right into the first of the 6 possible student schedules. This one is for 6th graders attending in-person classes. So a 6th grader that is elected to attend in-person classes and has an in-person schedule will be here on either Monday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday, according to their cohort, and they will follow our traditional period schedule. And we have taken into account siblings from the same family to make sure that we schedule them on the same day whenever possible if they have siblings in 7th and 8th grade, because you'll see later that 7th grade comes in on Monday and Thursday, 8th grade comes in on Tuesday and Friday as well. And we even took a look at considering siblings at the elementary and high school. Students will stay in one classroom for the majority of the day, with the exception of their workshops and lunch. Workshops happen in the afternoon during period 7 and 8 in both math and ELA. It is a second instructional time. It's also the time when we provide AIS services to students. All core area and special area teachers will come to the classroom, which means that students, for the most part, are not changing classrooms during the day. The only time that they would move outside the classroom would be for the workshops, which are period 7 and 8. And that's the only reason that you would need a traditional printed schedule. By the way, I have my welcome letters as well as student schedules and our period schedule in the office, and they'll be going out in the mail either later today, the 20th of August, or tomorrow, Friday, the 21st. Finally, lessons for music will be scheduled on days that the students are not on campus, and teachers will hold office hours on Wednesdays. Remember, 6th grade teachers are teaching Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, so their only ability to hold office hours would be on Wednesdays. This is our in-person instructional period schedule. This is actually the period schedule that we would use in most normal years, with the small exception of homeroom starting at 7:30 and running to 7:40. What does a 6th grade remote-only schedule look like? First of all, these students will not receive a printed schedule because the printed schedule would not apply to them at all, it turns out. So students will attend all of their classes, both core and non-core or special classes, on Wednesdays, and this schedule will be sent home to them. These students will have one certified teacher for all 4 core subject areas and can access her throughout the week because she is not one of the 6th grade core area teachers. She has increased availability to students. Once again, music lessons will be scheduled on a day other than Wednesday. And this is a unique point in this bullet. If the entire school ends up moving to a remote model, then these students would maintain their schedule. And the reason for that is to maintain educational continuity with the teacher. And I will be reevaluating the schedule of these students to determine if additional time is required other than just the Wednesday as we get into it. There are a very small number of 6th grade students opting for this. Here is the remote only instruction for 6th graders going with remote only model. And once again, it will be sent home with my welcome letter. The next model is the 7th grade hybrid schedule. Notice I'm calling it hybrid instead of in person. And the reason for that is that students will attend their core area classes. When I say core area classes, I'm talking about math, science, ELA, and social studies in person on Mondays and Thursdays following an 80-minute block schedule. Then students will attend all non-core or elective classes, special classes virtually on Tuesdays and Fridays following their printed schedule and our virtual instructional schedule, which I will show you in a minute. There is also a Wednesday world language period that was added in to help bring the instructional minutes for world language closer to what students would have with the block instruction. Students will stay in one location for the day, including their lunch. Music lessons will be scheduled once again on days that students are not on campus. So those virtual days are potentially Wednesday. Core area teachers will be available for office hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Here is the hybrid or in-person part of the 7th grade block schedule. You can see we built time in for arrival and temperature screening in the morning. There's a 5-minute homeroom, and then there are 80-minute blocks throughout the day. There's 10 minutes in between blocks. I would envision that time to be used for students to relax, perhaps listen to some music. One of the instructional spaces is the middle school cafeteria, and you can see those instructional spaces at the bottom of the screen. Middle school cafeteria is quite large. Students would have the ability to get up, stretch their legs, walk to the back of the room if they want to, still be able to maintain social distance from other students in the class. And you can see the other 2 classrooms there, 305 and 105. Any student in the accelerated program would automatically be in room 305 so that they receive those 2 accelerated classes during block 3 and 4 for science and math. All right. In this slide, I have an actual 7th grade schedule on the right, which I would like to talk through. When you receive your actual schedule, there will be a spring schedule beneath this fall schedule and there may be some empty rectangles on there where you don't have anything scheduled. That's okay. That will likely be a study hall. And that's always the case. We issue new schedules when the spring semester starts. And even though I'm going to talk through this for a 7th grade hybrid student schedule, the same logic could be applied to the 8th grade hybrid schedule that I'll talk about a little bit later. So you'll see on this student schedule, I put a line through the period 1 science class, again, period 2, period 3, period 5. Those are all 4 of the core classes that students would get in person. Really, the schedule is important to see when students would report to their virtual only classes. So this student happens to have a study hall, period 4, on A day. And if you look to the left screen, it's at the left-hand side of the screen, it says virtual instructional schedule, 7th grade, once again, is on Tuesday and Friday. Period 4 begins at 9:59, but for A day ends at 10:20. Well, students don't need to report to study hall virtually, so this student is free. However, the student does have music during 4th period B day, So they would sign into their Google Meet from 10:22 to 10:42 in speaking with Mr. Foxton and also Mrs. Pitkin. They plan to use this time for instruction of music theory and then to schedule, as I mentioned earlier, lessons during times when students are free on virtual times, and the student will be able to schedule those lessons according to when they wanted to have the lesson, when it fit into their time and their availability. Of course, lunch is free time at home. And then period 7, the student would report for their English 7 workshop from 12:04 to 12:24, and then to PE from 12:27 to 12:47, and so on throughout the day. The only difference being period 8, they have a Spanish class. Spanish and French, world language classes, are full period classes on both letter days. So for period 8, this student would be on the Google Meet from 12:50 all the way to 1:33. At the very bottom of the screen, you see the world language virtual schedule for 7th grade on Wednesdays. This student takes Spanish 7, 8th period. So they would have a Wednesday class from 12:15 to 1 o'clock. And once again, that was done in an effort to try and equalize the number of instructional minutes for world language students. What does a 7th grade remote only schedule look like? Students would attend all core classes virtually with the 7th grade teachers, same teachers on Wednesdays, and this schedule will be sent home. I will also share it in just a moment on my screen. Students will attend all non-core classes virtually on Tuesdays and Fridays with their peers, following their printed schedule and our virtual instructional schedule with the addition of the Wednesday world language period. So it's really just exactly what I explained on the last slide for their virtual non-core classes. However, they would attend all their core classes on Wednesday. Music lessons are still scheduled on a day other than Wednesday, and core area teachers would be available to these students for office hours on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and non-core area teachers would be available on Wednesdays only. This is the remote-only instruction schedule for Wednesday. So depending on what your printed schedule says, whether you're in Math 7 or Math 7A, will determine at what time you show up for that Google Meet on Wednesday. There's a smaller version of the virtual instructional schedule that I showed on my previous screen, and the world language virtual schedule also there. All of this will be sent home to students electing each educational plan. What does an 8th grade hybrid schedule look like? This is an analogous conversation to the 7th grade hybrid schedule, with the only change being days. Students will attend core classes in person on Tuesdays and Fridays following the 80-minute block schedule. I'm using the same rooms. Students would attend all non-core classes virtually on Mondays and Thursdays following the printed schedule, their printed schedule that we're sending home, and our virtual instructional schedule that you just saw, as well as the Wednesday world language period. Students will stay in one location for the day, including lunch. Music lessons will be scheduled on days that students aren't on campus, and then core area teachers will be available for office hours on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Once again, you see the block schedule that we're utilizing, as well as the instructional spaces. Here's the virtual part of the 8th grade schedule, Mondays and Thursdays. It's the analogous conversation to what I had for a 7th grade hybrid student. And all this information will be sent home. You can see the times for the world language meeting on Wednesdays is a little bit different. What does an 8th grade remote only schedule look like? This is once again going to be very similar to the 7th grade remote only schedule. Students will attend all core classes virtually with the 8th grade teachers on Wednesdays, and this schedule will be sent home. Students will attend all non-core classes virtually on Mondays and Thursdays with their peers, following their printed schedule and our virtual instructional schedule, as well as the Wednesday world language period. Music lessons would be scheduled on a day other than Wednesday. Core area teachers will be available for office hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Non-core area teachers on Wednesdays. The reason that the non-core area teachers are only available on Wednesdays is that it's, in many cases, they have high school students and middle school students. They're operating on the 4 days of the week other than Wednesday and have responsibilities for those classes. So the only possible office hours would be on Wednesdays. Here's the remote only instruction schedule for Wednesday. Once again, a student would look at the printed schedule that is sent home to them and see what classes are on their schedule and align them to the Google Meet times shown here. This will all be sent home. Once again, the world language virtual schedule is also present. All right, so for the first day of school, on Monday, September 14th, we're going to welcome half of the 6th grade here, which I'm calling cohort 1, as well as the 7th grade. And then on Tuesday, September 15th, we'll welcome grade 6 cohort 2, as well as our 8th graders back. I will be meeting with the 6th grade almost immediately upon entry into the building. They've got a chance to meet their teachers and have the orientation that we were not able to hold in late August. I want to review safety protocols, expectations, and explain their schedule to them. And then after that, I will visit the 7th or 8th grade instructional rooms to review safety protocols, expectations, and to explain schedules as well. For arrival, buses will be unloading at staggered times. As students enter the building, they will have their temperature taken and we will sanitize their hands, or they will sanitize their own hands, I should say. And students will go right to their classrooms. Parent drop-off will once again be at the Lilac lobby in the back, where we'll also be taking temperature. Students enter the building and students will sanitize their hands. As far as safety protocol, we're going to give explicit instruction on hand washing, mask wearing, and social distancing. This will be taught and modeled throughout the day in building. Children will wear masks when they are entering the building, transitioning through the hallways, and anytime they are unable to socially distance from one another. They do not need to wear the mask or the face covering during instruction or while eating, because we have made arrangements for them to be socially distant during those times. Hand washing, sanitizing will occur when students enter the building, before and after eating, and throughout the school day. Touchless sanitizing stations are throughout the building. The safety of our children, we will be unable to have visitors in the building. If your child needs to be picked up early, you will sign them out through the front desk. If a child comes to school with a fever, they will be brought to the isolation room and you will have to pick them up. All students will be able to purchase lunch from the high school cafeteria. That will be the single cafeteria we're using for lunches, because the middle school cafeteria is being used as an instructional space. The 6th graders will eat in the high school cafeteria, and that's during period 6, our traditional lunch period at the middle school. The 7th and 8th graders are on a block schedule. They will eat in their instructional classroom after purchasing lunch if they need it, and their lunch occurs between 12 and 12:30. That also helps out Joan Hopak in processing not only high school, but also middle school students for lunch by spreading them out. As far as social and emotional learning goes, we recognize that returning to school may be a source of anxiety or nervousness for your child. Their social and emotional well-being are a top priority. Our student assistance counselor, Ms. Wright, our guidance counselor, Mrs. Geary, and our school psychologist, Mr. Thaxton, will be available to any student and actively looking out for students needing assistance. We will have a staggered dismissal time by room starting after 2 p.m. with 7th or 8th grade and then 6th grade. I did not mention it when I showed the 7th and 8th grade schedules when the block schedules when 7th and 8th graders are here in person. But at the end of the day, there was an independent learning time that's built in, and that's also to allow for a staggered dismissal for 7th and 8th graders. Yes, it's a chance for them to get schoolwork done. It's also an opportunity to dismiss a few minutes early by grade level, and then to dismiss the 6th grade after the 7th or 8th grade has been dismissed. Parent pickup will be the same as last year. It would be at the Lilac lobby entrance, and as soon as students are dismissed from their class, they could head right out to meet the parent. Just a couple of odds and ends that I would like to go through. The first is that Chromebooks will be issued to all middle school students who were not issued one last year. This should be brought each day fully charged. Chromebooks will be issued to students on the first day of school. Remote-only students can pick them up on September 10th or 11th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the Lilac lobby, or September 10th from 6 to 7:30 in the Lilac lobby. Middle school students are encouraged to use a backpack so that they do not need to carry this Chromebook back and forth in their hands, as well as their other school supplies. I have had some questions submitted, and I'm just going to navigate on my other computer here to those questions. I'm going to read them and then answer them for you. Looks like the first one is a two-part question. For students entering 6th grade and not having the summer orientation to fill their locker with supplies and get a tour, what is the plan to make those children with anxiety feel more at ease as they enter a new building? And will they be divided into groups to find their lockers and classrooms? That's a great question. I touched on earlier the topic of orientation, that I plan to do that immediately as 6th graders enter the building, either from the Lilac lobby or off of the buses. We're actually going to have 6th graders held on the buses so that they get to enter the building after the middle school and high school students have already entered. And then we're going to bring them to a large location where I can conduct that orientation. I did not touch on the lockers, and the guidance is to not utilize lockers, at least for the start of the school year. So we will not be using the lockers, and we will be reevaluating that, I'm sure, with many other decisions as we get into this. My child is going into 6th grade, and we have opted for remote learning. My question is, are they allowed to attend the 6th grade orientation on the first day of school if they had if they have their own transportation? And another question I have is, since they will be doing remote learning and there is a doctor's appointment, or if they are going to miss something online that day, who do I notify? Again, great questions. They would not attend the 6th grade orientation. The main reason for that is that the things I'm going to go over at the orientation really don't pertain to them for the most part. I'm going to talk about safety protocols, talk about the building where certain classes will be held, when they transition, don't transition. Those things all don't apply to them, so they would not need to attend that orientation. As far as the second question goes on remote learning and having some type of appointment that would interfere with the Wednesday schedule, you would want to communicate that to the teacher, and your child could communicate that. Certainly, it's better if a parent can communicate that to the teacher. And the same goes for 7th or 8th grade students who are not able to attend, a virtual class due to an appointment. Of course, if at all possibly, it would be wonderful if those appointments could be scheduled at a different time, but I understand that that can't always happen. So communication is the key in all of these scenarios. What will happen with the accelerated classes? As you saw on the schedule earlier, accelerated classes were scheduled. Will there be tutorials on the school website for parents to learn how to use the Google Classroom and Google Meets? What a great question. That's something that we don't currently have. It's something that we probably need to have on our website. I know that YouTube is sometimes a good source of information. It's where I go to learn how to do things. And I'm sure that there are videos on there, but that's something that we can look at, identifying quality videos on those topics and putting them up there. The really good news is that all middle school students are already familiar with Google Classroom and Google Meets. The 5th grade utilizes that at the elementary building, and all of the 7th and 8th grade students that were in middle school last year are fully aware of both of those applications and how to fully utilize them, as well as school email. How many kids in 7th grade are in the hybrid learning? So that is the vast majority of students. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around 11 or 12 students that opted for a remote only model at 7th grade. There are only 5 students at 6th grade that opted for that, and I think approximately 8 in 8th grade that opted for the remote only model. How many kids will be in each class? That's a good question. It somewhat depends on the size of the instructional space. The middle school cafeteria is the largest space, so I could have up to 34 students in there. The really good news is that I won't be anywhere close to that number. I want to say it's approximately 25, and that's the absolute largest. Some of the other classrooms that I'm using are a little bit larger classrooms. I think the number is around 17, but there's obviously fluctuations depending on the size of the room. 17 in the larger one, and I think it's even fewer than that in the smaller room, maybe 13 or so. So they are about the same size as normal classes with the exception of the middle school cafeteria. Those are all of the questions that were submitted. So I would like to take a moment to remind you of the other virtual chats, question and answer sessions that are available. The high school principal, Dr. Michael Johnson, will be presenting a live stream at 1 p.m. that will be recorded. And then later, elementary principal, Mrs. Tolman, will be presenting at 6 p.m. If you have children at the high school or elementary building, I would highly encourage you to attend those. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. There's my email address, or feel free to give me a call, and I'd be happy to answer the questions that you have. Thank you so much for your time and for all of your efforts, and I look forward to seeing all the students shortly. Take care.